Hello there, and welcome to a gentle place where time moves differently. Tonight, we're stepping away from the rush of everyday life and descending into one of nature's most peaceful sanctuaries. We're going to explore the forest floor, that quiet realm beneath towering trees where roots weave their ancient stories and moss creates carpets softer than any human hand could craft. This isn't just a journey through dirt and decay. This is an expedition into a living world that exists in perpetual twilight, where every fallen leaf becomes part of an intricate dance of renewal, and where the smallest organisms perform some of the most essential work on our planet. Here, in this hushed cathedral of decomposition and growth, we'll discover communities so complex they rival entire cities, yet so subtle they're invisible to the hurried glance. If you find peace in these quiet explorations of nature's hidden wonders, feel free to like and subscribe, or simply rest your thoughts in the comments below. It helps others find their way to this tranquil corner of discovery, one peaceful soul at a time. But for now, let's begin our gentle descent into the world beneath our feet. Picture yourself standing at the edge of an ancient forest. Above you, the canopy stretches like a green cathedral ceiling, filtering sunlight into scattered golden coins that dance across the forest floor. The air here carries the rich scent of earth and growing things, a perfume that speaks of centuries of quiet transformation. As your eyes adjust to the gentle dimness, you begin to see that what appeared to be simple ground is actually a universe of extraordinary complexity. The forest floor exists in a realm of perpetual dusk. High above, leaves and branches form such a dense canopy that only 2 to 5% of sunlight ever reaches this lowest level of the forest. This creates an environment unlike anywhere else on Earth, where the rules of survival are written in whispers rather than shouts, and where the most important work happens so slowly it's almost invisible to human perception. This twilight world has remained essentially unchanged for millions of years. While storms rage overhead and seasons cycle through their endless dance, the forest floor maintains its steady rhythm of quiet transformation. The temperature here varies little from day to night, creating a stable environment where specialized communities can flourish without the dramatic fluctuations that challenge life in more exposed places. Beneath your feet lies a carpet that tells the story of time itself. Every layer represents seasons past, decades of fallen leaves, branches that once reached toward the sky, and the remains of creatures both large and small. This isn't simply a pile of debris waiting to be cleared away. This is nature's most sophisticated recycling center, a place where death becomes the foundation for new life in an endless cycle of renewal. The leaf litter that crunches softly underfoot represents just the surface of this complex system. Beneath the freshly fallen leaves of autumn lie the partially decomposed remains of previous years, each layer darker and more fragmented than the one above. Scientists call this the litter layer, but that clinical term hardly captures the poetry of what's actually happening here. This is a library written in the language of decomposition, where every page tells the story of a tree's journey from light to earth. As we kneel down and examine this carpet more closely, patterns begin to emerge that reveal the incredible organization hidden within apparent chaos. The newest leaves still retain their original shapes and colors, though they've begun to fade and curl at the edges. Below them, older leaves have become skeletons of their former selves, their soft tissues consumed, leaving behind delicate networks of veins that look like nature's own lacework. Deeper still, the organic matter becomes increasingly fragmented, breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces until it's difficult to identify what any individual fragment once was. This transformation doesn't happen through simple weathering or mechanical breakdown. Instead, it's orchestrated by an invisible army of decomposers, each playing their specific role in the grand symphony of decay and renewal. Bacteria, fungi, insects, worms, and countless other organisms work together in a coordinated effort that would make any human recycling facility seem primitive by comparison. The process begins almost immediately after a leaf falls. Within days, bacteria and fungi begin colonizing its surface, secreting enzymes that start breaking down the complex molecules that gave the leaf its structure. These microorganisms are the forest floor's master chemists, capable of dismantling everything from simple sugars to the tough lignin compounds that make wood so durable. They work with a patience and precision that spans months or years, gradually transforming dead tissue into the basic nutrients that will feed new growth. But the microorganisms don't work alone. Larger decomposers join the effort, each contributing their own specialized skills to the process. Springtails, tiny wingless insects, no bigger than a grain of rice, feed on decaying organic matter and help break it into smaller fragments. Millipedes and sow-bugs process leaf litter through their digestive systems, grinding it into pieces small enough for bacteria and fungi to handle more efficiently. Earthworms tunnel through the soil, ingesting organic matter and soil particles together, mixing them thoroughly in their gut before depositing nutrient-rich castings that enrich the entire system. This community of decomposers operates on schedules that span multiple seasons. A single leaf might take 6 months to 2 years to completely disappear, depending on its species and the environmental conditions. Oak leaves, with their tough, waxy surfaces, resist decomposition far longer than the delicate leaves of maples or birches. Pine needles, protected by their resinous coatings, can persist for several years before finally surrendering their structure to the patient work of decomposers. The timing of this decomposition is crucial to the forest's health. If organic matter broke down too quickly, nutrients would be released faster than growing plants could absorb them, leading to waste and potential environmental problems. If decomposition happened too slowly, dead material would accumulate faster than it could be processed, eventually smothering new growth and disrupting the forest's delicate balance. Instead, the system has evolved to release nutrients at exactly the rate needed to support continuous, sustainable growth. As this organic matter breaks down, it creates the foundation for one of the forest floor's most remarkable features, its incredible water-holding capacity. The spongy layer of partially decomposed material acts like a giant reservoir, absorbing rainfall and slowly releasing it during drier periods. This natural water management system helps prevent flooding during heavy rains, while maintaining consistent moisture levels that support the forest's diverse communities throughout varying weather conditions. The forest floor's ability to hold water is truly extraordinary. During a heavy rainstorm, this organic layer can absorb water equal to several times its own weight, storing it in the spaces between particles and within the cellular structure of decomposing material. As conditions dry out, this stored water is gradually released, either evaporating back into the atmosphere to help maintain humidity levels, or seeping deeper into the soil where it can be accessed by plant roots. This water storage system creates microclimates within the forest floor itself. Areas beneath thick moss layers remain moist even during extended dry periods, providing refuges for organisms that require consistent humidity to survive. Depressions, where organic matter accumulates, become temporary pools during wet weather, supporting aquatic microorganisms and providing drinking spots for forest wildlife. The variation in moisture levels across the forest floor creates a mosaic of different habitats, each supporting its own specialized community of organisms. Moving deeper into this layered world, we encounter the realm where plant roots begin their own remarkable story. Just below the surface litter, a network of incredible complexity spreads through the soil, connecting every tree and plant in an underground web of mutual support and communication. These root systems represent some of nature's most sophisticated examples of cooperation and resource sharing, creating partnerships that have evolved over millions of years. The roots we can see when a tree falls or when erosion exposes them represent only a small fraction of the total root system. For every pound of wood and leaves visible above ground, there may be an equal or greater mass of roots hidden below the surface. These underground structures extend far beyond the tree's canopy, often reaching 2 to 3 times farther horizontally than the tree is tall. In mature forests, the root systems of different trees overlap and interweave so thoroughly that it becomes impossible to determine where one tree's influence ends and another's begins. The architecture of these root systems reveals a sophisticated understanding of resource optimization. Large structural roots provide stability and serve as highways for transporting water and nutrients throughout the tree. From these main arteries branch smaller secondary roots, which give rise to even finer tertiary roots. At the very tips of this branching network are the root hairs, microscopic extensions so small they can only be seen under magnification, yet so numerous they increase the root system's surface area by thousands of times. This branching pattern isn't random, but follows mathematical principles that maximize efficiency while minimizing energy expenditure. The angles at which roots branch, the spacing between growing tips, and the thickness of different root segments all follow patterns that have been refined through evolutionary time to create the most effective possible system for resource acquisition. These same mathematical principles appear in river systems, blood vessels, and lightning patterns, suggesting fundamental rules that govern how networks develop in nature. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of forest root systems isn't their architecture, but their partnerships. Almost every tree root in the forest is connected to an underground network of fungal threads, so extensive and complex that scientists have compared it to the internet. These fungal partners, called mycorrhizae, form relationships with tree roots that represent one of nature's most successful collaborations. The fungal threads, called hyphae, are incredibly fine, often only a few micrometers in diameter, yet they can extend for kilometers through the soil, connecting trees across vast areas and creating what researchers have dubbed the wood wide web. Through this network, trees can share resources, exchange information, and support each other in ways that fundamentally challenge our understanding of how forests work. A single fungal network might connect dozens or even hundreds of trees, creating a communication system that operates continuously beneath our feet. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical signals through the fungal network that warn neighboring trees to begin producing defensive compounds. During droughts, trees with access to water can share it with those that are struggling. Mother trees, the largest and oldest individuals in the forest, can recognize their own offspring and preferentially support them with extra nutrients during their vulnerable early years. This underground internet operates on a currency of carbon. Trees produce sugars through photosynthesis and trade some of these carbohydrates to their fungal partners in exchange for nutrients and water that the fungi can access more efficiently than tree roots alone. The fungi, in return, dramatically increase the tree's ability to absorb phosphorus, nitrogen, and other essential nutrients from the soil. Some estimates suggest that this partnership can increase a tree's nutrient absorption capacity by a factor of 1,000 or more. The complexity of these relationships becomes even more fascinating when we consider that different tree species often partner with different fungal species, creating specialized networks that have co-evolved together over millions of years. Oak trees typically associate with different fungi than pine trees, and each partnership has developed unique characteristics that benefit both partners. This specificity means that the underground networks of different forest types can be as distinct as their above-ground appearances. These fungal networks also serve as information highways, carrying chemical messages that help coordinate forest-wide responses to environmental challenges. When bark beetles attack a stand of pine trees, the affected trees can broadcast distress signals through the network, prompting healthy trees to increase their production of toxic resins that make them less attractive to the beetles. During seasonal changes, information about temperature and moisture conditions spreads through the network, helping trees coordinate their responses to environmental cues. The fungal partners in these networks are themselves marvels of biological engineering. Unlike plants, which produce their own food through photosynthesis, fungi must obtain their energy by breaking down organic matter or through partnerships with other organisms. The mycorrhizal fungi have chosen the partnership route, evolving incredibly sophisticated biochemical machinery for processing soil nutrients and exchanging them with their plant partners. These fungal networks create their own microenvironments within the soil, affecting everything from pH levels to moisture distribution. Areas around active fungal hyphae often show increased microbial activity as bacteria and other organisms take advantage of the nutrients and favorable conditions created by the fungi. This creates cascading effects throughout the soil ecosystem, with the fungal networks serving as organizing principles that structure entire underground communities. The discovery of these networks has revolutionized our understanding of forest ecology, revealing that what appears above ground as a collection of individual trees is actually more like a single superorganism, with countless interdependent parts working together for mutual benefit. This perspective transforms the way we think about forest conservation and management, highlighting the importance of preserving not just individual trees, but the complex underground relationships that sustain entire forest communities. As we continue our gentle exploration of this hidden world, we begin to appreciate that the forest floor is not simply the bottom of the forest ecosystem, but rather its foundation, the place where all the forest's cycles of growth, death, and renewal converge in an endless dance of transformation. The microscopic realm within this foundation reveals secrets that dwarf the complexity of any human city. Here, in spaces measured in millimeters, entire civilizations rise and fall with the seasons, their stories written in chemical signals and electrical pulses too subtle for our senses to detect directly. As we peer deeper into this miniature universe, we discover that what seems like empty space between soil particles is actually teeming with activity more intricate than the busiest metropolitan center. Within the protective embrace of moss colonies, worlds within worlds unfold in perfect harmony. Each cushiony moss clump creates its own climate, maintaining temperature and humidity levels that can differ significantly from the surrounding environment just centimeters away. These green oases serve as refuges for creatures so small they could dance on the head of a pin, yet their lives are filled with drama, adventure, and survival challenges, every bit as compelling as those faced by larger, more visible animals. Tardigrades, often called water bears for their endearing bear-like appearance when viewed under magnification, patrol these moss forests like gentle giants in a world of green towers. These remarkable creatures, barely visible even under a microscope, possess superpowers that would make any science fiction hero envious. They can survive being completely dried out for years, withstand temperatures that would instantly kill most other life forms, and even endure the vacuum of space itself. Yet here in the moss, they live quiet lives, slowly ambling between moss leaves in search of bacteria and organic particles to eat. Sharing this microscopic landscape are springtails, tiny wingless insects that navigate the moss forest with remarkable agility. When disturbed, they can launch themselves distances equivalent to a human jumping over a skyscraper, using a specialized spring-loaded appendage that gives them their name. These diminutive acrobats spend their lives recycling organic matter, breaking down dead moss leaves and other debris into smaller fragments that bacteria and fungi can process more efficiently. The spaces between moss leaves fill with water films thinner than human hair, yet these microscopic pools support complete aquatic ecosystems. Rotifers, translucent creatures that look like living jewels, spin through these water films using crowns of beating cilia that create miniature whirlpools to capture food particles. Nematode worms, sleek as microscopic serpents, glide through the water with undulating movements, some feeding on bacteria, while others hunt smaller organisms with the precision of underwater predators. This hidden aquatic world expands and contracts with the moisture levels in the moss, creating seasonal wetlands that exist on a scale invisible to casual observation. During wet periods, the water films connect and expand, allowing aquatic organisms to travel freely throughout the moss colony. As conditions dry, these temporary seas shrink to isolated pools, concentrating life into ever smaller refuges until only the most drought-resistant species remain active. The rhythms of this microscopic world mirror those of the larger forest, but compressed into time frames that make every day an epic journey of survival and adaptation. Bacterial populations can double in hours under favorable conditions, creating population booms that provide feast times for their predators. Fungal spores drift through the moss like microscopic seeds, settling into new territories where they can establish colonies and begin the patient work of decomposition. Chemical communication in this miniature realm operates with a sophistication that rivals any human technology. Bacteria release molecular signals that coordinate group behaviors, allowing millions of individual cells to act as unified communities. Some species can switch between different survival strategies based on chemical cues from their environment, transforming from active growth phases to dormant survival modes as conditions change. The moss itself participates in these chemical conversations, releasing compounds that can attract beneficial bacteria while repelling potential pathogens. These green guardians of the forest floor have evolved an impressive array of biochemical defenses, producing antibiotics and other protective substances that help maintain the health of their microscopic communities. As moisture levels change throughout the day and season, the moss colonies demonstrate their remarkable ability to shut down and restart their biological processes. During dry periods, they can reduce their metabolism to nearly zero, entering a state of suspended animation that allows them to survive conditions that would be fatal to most other plants. The return of moisture triggers an almost miraculous revival, with the moss quickly resuming photosynthesis and growth as if awakening from a peaceful sleep. This ability to pause and resume life processes creates a unique stability in the moss ecosystem. While other habitats might experience dramatic population crashes during unfavorable conditions, the moss world simply slows down, preserving its communities in a state of quiet patience until better times return. This resilience has allowed moss ecosystems to persist virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, making them some of the most ancient and stable communities on Earth. The color changes that sweep through moss colonies throughout the year tell stories of adaptation and survival. The vibrant greens of spring and early summer reflect periods of active growth and photosynthesis, when the moss is capturing sunlight and carbon dioxide to fuel its expansion. The deeper, more muted tones of late summer and autumn indicate a shift toward conservation mode, as the moss prepares for the leaner months ahead by storing resources and reinforcing its cellular defenses. Even during winter, when snow covers the forest floor and temperatures drop well below freezing, the moss world continues its quiet activities. The insulating properties of snow create a protective blanket that maintains relatively stable temperatures in the moss layer, allowing many of its inhabitants to remain active throughout the coldest months. This winter activity is usually imperceptible to human observation, but sophisticated instruments can detect the continued respiration and metabolic processes that keep the moss ecosystem functioning year-round. The relationship between moss and the larger forest creates feedback loops that influence everything from local humidity levels to soil chemistry. The moisture that moss colonies capture and slowly release helps maintain the humid conditions that many forest organisms require. During dry periods, this moisture release creates microclimates that can support plants and animals that would otherwise be unable to survive in the drier conditions of more exposed areas. Moss colonies also serve as nurseries for many forest plants, providing the perfect conditions for seed germination and early growth. The stable moisture and temperature conditions, combined with protection from wind and temperature extremes, create ideal environments for young plants to establish themselves. Many tree seedlings begin their lives growing directly from moss-covered logs or soil, benefiting from the nurturing environment that these ancient plants provide. The chemical processes occurring within moss colonies contribute significantly to the forest's nutrient cycles. As moss grows and eventually dies, it releases nutrients back into the soil in forms that other plants can readily absorb. The slow, steady nature of this nutrient release provides a consistent food source for the forest community, helping to maintain productivity even during periods when other sources of nutrients might be scarce. Scientific research has revealed that the diversity of life within moss colonies often exceeds that found in many other forest habitats. A single handful of moss might contain more species than an entire meadow, with new organisms being discovered regularly as research techniques become more sophisticated. This incredible diversity reflects the complex three-dimensional structure of moss colonies, which create countless microhabitats within a very small space. The vertical structure of moss colonies mimics that of the larger forest, with different zones supporting different types of organisms. The upper layers, exposed to light and air, host organisms adapted to more variable conditions. The middle layers provide stable, humid environments, perfect for organisms requiring consistent moisture. The lower layers, in contact with the soil, support organisms that specialize in processing nutrients and organic matter from the forest floor. This layered structure creates gradients of light, moisture, temperature, and chemical conditions that allow many different species to coexist within the same moss colony. Each species occupies its own niche, contributing to the overall functioning of the community while avoiding direct competition with its neighbors. This niche differentiation is so precise that organisms living only millimeters apart might experience completely different environmental conditions and follow entirely different survival strategies. The moss world demonstrates that size is no barrier to complexity or sophistication. These miniature ecosystems operate according to the same principles that govern larger ecological systems, but scaled down to dimensions that make every moss leaf equivalent to a forest tree and every water droplet equivalent to a lake. The efficiency and sustainability of these microscopic communities offer lessons that could inform human efforts to create more harmonious relationships with the natural world. As we marvel at the hidden complexity of the moss realm, we begin to understand that our gentle journey through the forest floor has revealed not just one ecosystem, but countless interconnected worlds, each operating on its own scale of space and time, yet all contributing to the magnificent tapestry of forest life that surrounds us in the peaceful twilight of this ancient sanctuary. The interconnected nature of these moss communities extends beyond their own boundaries, creating bridges that link the forest floor to every other layer of the forest ecosystem. Moss-covered logs become highways for small mammals, providing safe passage through the understory while offering countless opportunities for foraging and shelter. The insects that emerge from moss colonies form a crucial food source for birds, salamanders, and other predators, creating food webs that stretch from the microscopic realm to the forest canopy high above. These living logs, fallen giants that once reached toward the sky, now serve as nurse logs for the next generation of trees. As the wood slowly decomposes over decades, it creates perfect growing conditions for tree seedlings, providing them with nutrients, moisture, and protection during their most vulnerable years. The moss that colonizes these fallen trees plays a crucial role in this process, helping to retain moisture and moderate temperature extremes while contributing its own nutrients to the developing seedlings. The transformation of a fallen tree into a nurse log follows a predictable sequence that unfolds over many years. Initially, the bark provides protection for the underlying wood, slowing decomposition and creating opportunities for pioneer moss species to establish themselves. These early colonizers are often hardy species capable of surviving on the limited nutrients available from the bark's surface, gradually building up organic matter that makes the log more hospitable for other organisms. As the bark begins to loosen and fall away, exposing the underlying wood, different moss species move in to take advantage of the changing conditions. These secondary colonizers often have different nutritional requirements and growth patterns, creating a succession of moss communities that mirrors the broader patterns of forest succession happening on larger scales. The changing moss communities, in turn, support different assemblages of microscopic organisms, creating waves of biological diversity that sweep across the decomposing log over time. The wood itself undergoes remarkable transformations as it slowly returns to the forest floor. Fungi, the master decomposers of woody material, send their thread-like hyphae deep into the log's interior, secreting enzymes that break down the complex lignin and cellulose molecules that give wood its strength. This process can take decades or even centuries for large trees, creating a slow-release system that provides steady nutrients to the forest community over extended periods. Different fungal species specialize in decomposing different parts of the wood, creating a succession of decomposer communities that work in coordinated sequence. Some fungi focus on the softer sapwood, while others tackle the denser heartwood. Certain species excel at breaking down lignin, the tough compound that gives wood its rigidity, while others specialize in processing cellulose and other carbohydrates. This division of labor ensures that every component of the fallen tree is eventually recycled, with nothing going to waste in nature's efficient system. As decomposition progresses, the log becomes increasingly soft and spongy, creating ideal conditions for tree seedlings to establish themselves. The decomposing wood provides a rich source of nutrients, while the elevated position of the log offers protection from ground-dwelling herbivores and better access to filtered sunlight. Many of the forest's largest and oldest trees began their lives as seedlings growing on nurse logs, their roots eventually growing around and through the decomposing wood until they reach the mineral soil below. The nurse log system creates distinctive patterns in the forest landscape that tell the story of past disturbances and recovery cycles. Lines of mature trees, all roughly the same age, often mark the location of ancient fallen giants that served as nurse logs decades or centuries ago. These colonnade formations reveal the forest's history, showing where windstorms, fires, or other events created openings in the canopy, and how the forest community responded to these disturbances. Beneath the visible drama of nurse log succession, the chemical processes of decomposition create their own hidden landscapes. As organic molecules are broken down and rebuilt, they form complex compounds that can persist in the soil for decades or centuries. These stable organic molecules, called humus, give forest soils their characteristic dark color and rich texture, while serving as long-term storage sites for carbon and nutrients. The formation of humus represents one of the forest floor's most important contributions to global environmental cycles. Carbon that was once part of the atmospheric carbon dioxide is captured by photosynthesis, incorporated into wood and leaves, and then slowly transformed into stable soil organic matter through the patient work of decomposer organisms. This process removes carbon from the atmosphere and stores it underground, helping to moderate global climate patterns over long time scales. The stability of soil organic matter depends heavily on its chemical complexity and the environmental conditions in the forest floor. The cool, moist conditions typical of forest floors slow decomposition rates, allowing organic matter to accumulate over time. The chemical complexity of wood and other plant materials means that some components resist decomposition for much longer than others, creating a spectrum of organic compounds with different residence times in the soil. This chemical diversity in soil organic matter creates a buffering system that helps stabilize forest ecosystems against environmental fluctuations. During dry periods, the organic matter releases stored moisture gradually, maintaining humid conditions that support forest life. During periods of heavy rainfall, the organic matter absorbs excess water, preventing erosion and nutrient loss. The chemical buffering capacity of organic matter also helps maintain soil pH levels within ranges that support healthy plant growth. The microscopic architecture of forest floor soils reveals structures of breathtaking complexity and beauty. Soil aggregates, clusters of mineral particles held together by organic compounds and fungal threads, create a three-dimensional maze of spaces and surfaces that provide countless microhabitats for soil organisms. These aggregates can be remarkably stable, maintaining their structure for years while providing the pore space necessary for air and water movement through the soil. The spaces between soil aggregates form an intricate network of tunnels and chambers that serves as the circulatory system of the forest floor. Water moves through these spaces, carrying dissolved nutrients to plant roots and transporting waste products away from areas of high biological activity. Air moves through the same network, providing the oxygen that most soil organisms require for respiration, while allowing carbon dioxide produced by decomposition to escape to the atmosphere. The surfaces of soil particles and organic matter provide enormous amounts of area for biological and chemical reactions. A single gram of forest soil might contain several hundred square meters of surface area when all the microscopic particles are considered. These surfaces serve as attachment sites for bacteria and fungi, reaction sites for chemical processes, and storage areas for nutrients and water. The chemical properties of these surfaces help determine which nutrients are available to plants and which are held in reserve for future release. Living within this labyrinth of soil spaces and surfaces are communities of organisms so diverse that scientists have compared soil biodiversity to that of tropical rainforests. Bacteria exist in incredible variety, with different species specializing in processing different types of organic matter or performing specific chemical transformations. Some bacteria fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, making this essential nutrient available to plants. Others break down complex organic molecules, releasing simpler compounds that can be absorbed by plant roots. Soil fungi form networks that extend throughout the forest floor, connecting with plant roots and facilitating the exchange of nutrients and information. These fungal networks can persist for many years, growing and expanding as they encounter new food sources and potential plant partners. The longevity and extent of these networks make them among the largest living organisms on Earth, with some individual fungal networks spanning hundreds of hectares and persisting for centuries. The seasonal rhythms that govern the visible forest create corresponding pulses of activity in the soil community. Spring warming triggers increased microbial activity as soil organisms begin processing the organic matter that accumulated during the previous growing season. Summer heat and potential drought stress can slow soil processes, while autumn leaf fall provides a massive input of fresh organic matter that fuels increased decomposer activity. Winter cold slows most biological processes, though activity never completely stops due to the insulating properties of soil and organic matter. These seasonal cycles create temporal niches that different soil organisms have evolved to exploit. Some bacteria specialize in rapid growth during brief periods of optimal conditions, while others maintain slow, steady activity throughout the year. Certain fungi time their reproductive cycles to coincide with periods of high moisture and organic matter availability, while others produce hardy spores that can survive extended periods of unfavorable conditions. The chemical signals that coordinate these seasonal responses travel through the soil in dissolved form, creating communication networks that operate on timescales ranging from minutes to months. Plants can detect seasonal changes in soil temperature and moisture, adjusting their root activity and nutrient uptake accordingly. Soil microorganisms respond to chemical cues from plants. Bacteria communicate with each other through molecular signals, and fungi coordinate their activities across vast network distances through chemical messengers. This underground communication system operates continuously, processing information about environmental conditions, resource availability, and potential threats. The complexity of these chemical conversations rivals that of any human communication network, with multiple signals operating simultaneously at different spatial and temporal scales. Understanding these communication systems has revealed that forest floors function more like integrated superorganisms than collections of independent individuals. The resilience of forest floor communities stems from their incredible diversity and redundancy. Multiple species often perform similar ecological functions, ensuring that essential processes continue, even if some species are eliminated by disease, environmental stress, or other disturbances. This functional redundancy provides insurance against ecosystem collapse, while allowing the community to adapt gradually to changing environmental conditions. The slow pace of change in forest floor communities contributes to their stability over long time periods. Unlike above-ground communities that can be dramatically altered by single storm events or pest outbreaks, soil communities change gradually in response to long-term environmental trends. This stability makes forest floors reliable foundations for the more dynamic communities that exist in the forest canopy and understory layers. Climate change presents new challenges to forest floor communities as temperature and precipitation patterns shift beyond their historical ranges. Some soil organisms may be unable to adapt quickly enough to keep pace with rapid environmental changes, potentially disrupting the carefully balanced processes that maintain forest health. Understanding how forest floor communities respond to environmental change has become crucial for predicting and managing the future of forest ecosystems. Research into forest floor ecology continues to reveal new layers of complexity and interconnection that challenge our understanding of how ecosystems function. Advanced molecular techniques allow scientists to identify soil organisms that cannot be cultured in laboratories, revealing previously unknown diversity in soil communities. Sophisticated imaging techniques provide glimpses into the three-dimensional structure of soil communities, showing how organisms arrange themselves in space and how this spatial organization affects ecosystem processes. The forest floor's role as an interface between the living and non-living components of forest ecosystems makes it a crucial area for understanding how natural systems maintain their stability and productivity. The chemical transformations that occur here link the geological processes that create soil minerals with the biological processes that create and decompose organic matter. This intersection of geology and biology creates conditions that support some of the most complex and productive ecosystems on Earth. As we continue our peaceful exploration of this hidden realm, we begin to appreciate that every step we take in a forest rests upon foundations of incredible complexity and beauty. The quiet work of decomposition and renewal that surrounds us represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement, creating systems of efficiency and sustainability that offer profound lessons for human society. In the gentle twilight of the forest floor, we find not just the end of one cycle, but the endless beginning of countless others, each connected to the next in an unbroken chain of transformation that has sustained life on Earth since the first forests emerged from ancient seas. The invisible orchestra of the forest floor plays its most complex movements in the realm where chemistry becomes biology and biology becomes chemistry again. Here, in spaces smaller than the width of a human hair, molecular dramas unfold that determine the fate of entire ecosystems. Enzymes, those remarkable biological catalysts, work with precision that would make any human chemist envious, breaking apart complex molecules and rebuilding them into new forms that sustain the endless dance of forest life. These molecular transformations occur at rates that vary dramatically with temperature, moisture, and the availability of specific nutrients. During the warm, humid days of summer, enzymatic activity reaches peak levels, processing organic matter at rates that can be measured in hours or days. As autumn arrives and temperatures cool, these same processes slow to a more measured pace, ensuring that nutrients are released gradually throughout the winter months when plant growth has ceased. But root systems continue their quiet work of maintenance and preparation. The precision of these chemical processes reflects millions of years of evolutionary fine-tuning. Each enzyme has evolved to perform specific tasks under particular conditions, creating a biochemical assembly line that operates with remarkable efficiency. Some enzymes specialize in breaking apart the tough lignin compounds that give wood its strength, while others focus on the simpler cellulose molecules that form the framework of leaves. Still others work on proteins, fats, and other organic compounds, each contributing to the systematic dismantling of dead organic matter. This molecular recycling system operates according to principles that maximize both efficiency and sustainability. Rather than breaking down organic matter as quickly as possible, the forest floor community has evolved to release nutrients at rates that match the needs of growing plants. This synchronization prevents waste while ensuring that essential nutrients remain available throughout the growing season. The timing is so precise that many plants have evolved to adjust their growth patterns to match the seasonal rhythms of nutrient release from decomposing organic matter. The water that moves through this system serves as both a medium for chemical reactions and a transportation network for dissolved nutrients. Each droplet that percolates through the forest floor becomes a tiny solution of essential plant nutrients, carrying nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and dozens of other elements in forms that plant roots can readily absorb. The journey of water through the organic layers creates a natural purification system that filters out impurities while concentrating beneficial nutrients. This water processing system operates on multiple scales simultaneously. At the microscopic level, water molecules interact with soil particles and organic matter through complex physical and chemical processes that determine which substances dissolve and which remain bound to solid surfaces. At larger scales, water flows through networks of pores and channels that have been created by root growth, animal burrows, and the natural settling of organic matter over time. The temperature regulation provided by the forest floor creates conditions that allow these water-mediated processes to continue throughout much of the year. Even during winter, the insulating properties of organic matter keep soil temperatures well above freezing, allowing slow but steady chemical and biological activity to continue. This temperature buffering is so effective that soil organisms in northern forests can remain active throughout the winter, processing organic matter and maintaining the nutrient cycles that will support spring growth. Beneath our feet, electrical signals pulse through the forest floor community with a complexity that rivals any human communication system. Plant roots generate electrical currents as they transport nutrients and respond to environmental stimuli. Fungal networks carry electrical signals across vast distances, coordinating responses to environmental changes and facilitating resource sharing between distant trees. Even bacteria generate electrical activity as part of their metabolic processes, creating a background hum of biological electricity that permeates the soil. These electrical phenomena play crucial roles in coordinating forest floor processes. When a tree root encounters a pocket of high nutrient concentration, electrical signals help coordinate the growth of additional root branches to exploit this resource. When fungal networks detect stress signals from one part of their system, electrical impulses help relay this information throughout the network, triggering protective responses across wide areas. The magnetic fields generated by these biological electrical processes may also influence forest floor organisms in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. Some soil bacteria appear to orient themselves according to magnetic fields, while certain fungi show growth patterns that suggest sensitivity to electromagnetic influences. These subtle interactions between biology and physics add another layer of complexity to the already intricate web of relationships that sustain forest floor communities. Sound waves, too, play a role in forest floor ecology that extends far beyond what human ears can detect. The movement of water through soil pores creates ultrasonic vibrations that some organisms may use for navigation or communication. Root growth generates acoustic signals as cells expand and tissues stretch, potentially providing information about soil conditions to neighboring plants. Even the expansion and contraction of soil particles in response to moisture changes create subtle acoustic signatures that may influence soil organisms. The chemical signatures that permeate forest floor communities create olfactory landscapes of incredible richness and complexity. To organisms with the appropriate sensory equipment, the forest floor represents a three-dimensional map of chemical information that reveals the location of food sources, potential mates, territorial boundaries, and environmental hazards. These chemical landscapes change constantly as organisms move through the soil. Chemical reactions proceed, and environmental conditions fluctuate. Some of these chemical signals operate over distances measured in millimeters, creating highly localized communication networks between closely associated organisms. Others travel much farther, carried by water movement or diffusion through soil pores, creating forest-wide communication systems that coordinate responses to environmental changes. The persistence of different chemical signals varies dramatically, with some lasting only minutes, while others remain detectable for weeks or months. Plants contribute their own chemical signatures to this complex sensory environment through root exudates, substances secreted by roots that can attract beneficial microorganisms while repelling potential pathogens. These root exudates represent a significant investment of plant resources, sometimes accounting for up to 30% of the carbon that plants fix through photosynthesis. The composition of root exudates changes with plant species, environmental conditions, and the plant's developmental stage, creating chemical fingerprints that allow soil organisms to identify and respond appropriately to different plants. The timing of root exudate release follows daily and seasonal rhythms that reflect the plant's metabolic cycles and environmental conditions. During periods of active growth, plants may release exudates almost continuously, creating zones of enhanced microbial activity around their roots. During dormant periods, exudate production slows dramatically, allowing soil organisms to focus their activities on processing accumulated organic matter rather than responding to fresh inputs from living plants. These chemical interactions between plants and soil organisms create feedback loops that can influence forest community composition over long time periods. Plants that produce exudates favoring beneficial soil organisms may gain competitive advantages that help them dominate particular sites. Over time, these plants can modify soil chemistry in ways that make conditions even more favorable for their own growth, while potentially making conditions less suitable for competing species. The three-dimensional architecture of forest floor communities creates countless microenvironments, each with its own unique combination of physical, chemical, and biological conditions. A piece of decomposing bark might provide habitat for organisms that require high moisture and low light, while the sunny edge of the same bark piece supports entirely different communities adapted to drier, brighter conditions. These micro-environmental gradients create opportunities for tremendous biological diversity within very small spaces. The vertical structure of forest floor communities extends both upward and downward from the soil surface, creating habitat zones that support different types of organisms. The upper layers, where fresh organic matter accumulates, provide food and habitat for organisms specializing in processing recently deceased plant and animal material. The middle layers, where decomposition is well advanced, support communities focused on breaking down more resistant organic compounds. The lower layers, where organic matter transitions into mineral soil, host organisms that specialize in processing highly decomposed organic matter and facilitating its integration with soil minerals. This vertical zonation creates opportunities for resource partitioning that allows many species to coexist without direct competition. Organisms occupying different vertical zones may have entirely different food sources, environmental requirements, and life cycles, even though they live within centimeters of each other. This spatial separation reduces competitive interactions, while maximizing the efficiency with which the community processes organic matter and cycles nutrients. The horizontal heterogeneity of forest floor communities creates additional opportunities for specialization and diversity. Areas beneath different tree species often develop distinctive soil characteristics that reflect the chemical composition of their leaf litter and root exudates. Coniferous trees, with their acidic needle litter, create soil conditions that favor different organisms than those found beneath deciduous trees with their more neutral leaf litter. These chemical differences can persist for many years, creating persistent habitat patches that support specialized communities. Disturbances in forest floor communities create opportunities for succession processes that mirror those occurring in above-ground plant communities. When a log falls or an animal creates a soil disturbance, pioneer species quickly colonize the disturbed area, beginning a predictable sequence of community development. These succession processes can take years or decades to complete, creating temporal diversity that adds another dimension to the spatial complexity of forest floor ecosystems. The recovery of forest floor communities from disturbances depends heavily on the presence of refugia, undisturbed areas that serve as sources of colonizing organisms. The patchy nature of most forest floor disturbances ensures that these refugia are usually available nearby, allowing rapid recolonization of disturbed sites. The interconnected nature of forest floor communities, particularly the extensive fungal networks, facilitates this recolonization process by providing highways for organism movement and information transfer. Climate variations create additional temporal patterns in forest floor community dynamics that operate on scales ranging from daily fluctuations to multi-year cycles. Daily temperature and moisture variations create opportunities for organisms with different environmental tolerances, with some species active during cool, moist periods, while others thrive during warmer, drier conditions. Seasonal variations create more dramatic shifts in community composition and activity levels, while multi-year climate cycles can influence community development over longer time periods. The response of forest floor communities to these climate variations demonstrates remarkable resilience and adaptability. Many soil organisms can adjust their metabolic rates, growth patterns, and reproductive strategies in response to environmental changes, allowing communities to maintain essential functions even under variable conditions. This physiological flexibility, combined with the high diversity of most forest floor communities, provides multiple pathways for adaptation to changing environmental conditions. Long-term studies of forest floor communities have revealed patterns of stability and change that operate on timescales much longer than human observation periods. Some community characteristics remain remarkably constant over decades or centuries, while others show gradual trends that reflect long-term environmental changes or ecosystem development processes. Understanding these long-term patterns requires research approaches that integrate historical records, paleological evidence, and careful monitoring of contemporary communities. The integration of forest floor processes with larger ecosystem functions creates connections that extend far beyond the boundaries of any individual forest. Nutrients processed by forest floor communities eventually reach streams and rivers, influencing aquatic ecosystems downstream. Carbon stored in forest floor organic matter affects regional and global carbon cycles. The water purification services provided by forest floor communities influence the quality of groundwater and surface water across entire watersheds. These broader connections highlight the importance of forest floor communities for maintaining ecosystem services that benefit both natural communities and human societies. The climate regulation provided by forest carbon storage, the water purification services of forest soils, and the biodiversity conservation functions of forest communities all depend critically on the proper functioning of forest floor ecosystems. Understanding and protecting these communities has become essential for maintaining the environmental services that forests provide to a rapidly changing world. As our gentle exploration of this hidden realm draws us deeper into its mysteries, we begin to understand that the forest floor represents far more than simply the bottom layer of forest ecosystems. It is the foundation upon which all forest life depends, the engine that drives the cycles of growth and renewal, and the library that stores the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of evolutionary experimentation. In its quiet depths, we find not just the secret of forest sustainability, but lessons for creating human systems that work in harmony with the natural processes that sustain all life on Earth. The chemistry of moisture in the forest floor creates landscapes of scent that shift and flow like invisible rivers. Each droplet of dew that forms on a moss leaf carries with it the molecular essence of countless organisms, creating perfumes that tell stories of life and death, growth and decay, cooperation and competition. These aromatic signatures drift through the still air of the forest floor, carrying information that guides the behavior of organisms from bacteria to beetles, each responding to chemical messages that have been refined over evolutionary time into languages more complex than any human communication system. During the early morning hours, when mist rises from the warming forest floor, these chemical messages become most concentrated and travel farthest. The molecules that create the forest's distinctive earthy scent, compounds called geosmin and petrichor, are produced by soil bacteria as byproducts of their metabolic processes. These same compounds can trigger behavioral responses in insects, guide the growth of fungal networks, and even influence the germination patterns of seeds buried in the forest floor. The seasonal changes in these chemical landscapes create temporal maps that forest organisms use to coordinate their life cycles with environmental conditions. Spring brings the fresh sense of new growth and awakening soil organisms. Chemical signals that trigger reproductive cycles in countless species. Summer heat concentrates these aromas, creating intense chemical gradients that guide organisms toward optimal habitats. Autumn introduces the complex fragrances of decomposition, rich molecular bouquets that signal the beginning of the great recycling processes that will sustain life through the lean months ahead. Winter transforms the chemical landscape once again, not by eliminating these processes, but by slowing them to a more measured pace. Under the insulating blanket of snow and fallen leaves, chemical reactions continue at rates determined by the steady temperatures maintained by the forest floor's remarkable thermal buffering capacity. The reduced volatility of cold air means that chemical messages travel shorter distances, but persist longer, creating stable zones of chemical information that can guide organisms through the challenges of winter survival. The interaction between these chemical signals and the physical structure of the forest floor creates three-dimensional maps of information that exist in both space and time. A fungal network might follow a chemical gradient for meters through the soil, guided by the scent of decomposing organic matter toward rich feeding grounds. Bacteria might form colonies along chemical pathways created by root exudates, establishing communities that persist for months or years in the same locations. These chemical pathways become highways for information transfer throughout the forest floor community. When a tree root system detects the chemical signature of beneficial mycorrhizal fungi, it can adjust its growth patterns to intercept these fungal networks and establish partnerships. When soil bacteria encounter the chemical distress signals released by plants under attack from pathogens, they can respond by producing antibiotics that help protect their plant partners from infection. The sophistication of these chemical communication systems becomes even more remarkable when we consider their precision and specificity. Different plant species produce distinctly different root exudates, allowing soil organisms to identify and respond appropriately to their potential partners. Some soil bacteria can distinguish between the chemical signatures of healthy and stressed plants, concentrating their beneficial activities where they are most needed. Certain fungi can recognize the chemical markers of their preferred tree partners from among dozens of different species growing in the same forest. This chemical specificity extends to the timing of these interactions as well. Many soil organisms can detect seasonal changes in the chemical composition of root exudates, allowing them to synchronize their activities with the plant's growth cycles. During periods of rapid plant growth, when roots are actively absorbing nutrients and water, soil organisms increase their activities to meet the increased demand for their services. During dormant periods, these same organisms reduce their metabolic rates to conserve energy, while maintaining the essential functions that will support renewed growth when conditions improve. The memory systems that operate within forest floor communities create continuity that spans multiple generations of organisms with vastly different lifespans. Soil organic matter serves as a kind of chemical library, storing molecular information about past environmental conditions and community compositions. This stored information can influence the development of future communities, creating legacy effects that persist for decades or centuries after the original conditions have changed. Some soil organisms have evolved the ability to read these chemical histories, using information stored in soil organic matter to make decisions about where to establish themselves and how to allocate their resources. Mycorrhizal fungi, for example, appear to use chemical cues from decomposing organic matter to identify locations where previous fungal networks were successful, increasing their chances of establishing productive partnerships with plant roots. The seasonal rhythms of chemical information storage and release create annual cycles that help coordinate forest-wide responses to environmental changes. During the growing season, active organisms continuously add new chemical information to the soil organic matter pool. During winter, when biological activity slows, this stored information becomes more prominent, guiding the activities of the organisms that remain active during the cold months. These chemical memory systems also provide resilience against environmental disturbances by preserving information about community composition and function that can guide recovery processes. After a fire or windstorm disrupts above-ground forest communities, the chemical information stored in forest floor organic matter can help re-establish the underground partnerships and nutrient cycling processes that will support forest regeneration. The integration of chemical information with other environmental cues creates multidimensional navigation systems that allow forest floor organisms to respond to complex environmental conditions. Temperature gradients, moisture levels, oxygen concentrations, and pH variations all interact with chemical signals to create environmental maps of extraordinary complexity and precision. Organisms that can read multiple types of environmental information simultaneously gain significant advantages in locating optimal habitats and avoiding dangerous conditions. Some soil bacteria have evolved sensory systems that can simultaneously detect chemical gradients, electrical fields, and mechanical vibrations, allowing them to navigate through soil environments with remarkable precision. These multimodal sensory capabilities enable them to locate food sources, avoid toxic conditions, and find suitable partners for beneficial interactions. The integration of different types of sensory information creates redundancy that ensures navigation accuracy even when individual sensory channels are compromised by environmental disturbances. The speed at which information travels through forest floor communities varies dramatically depending on the type of signal and the medium through which it moves. Chemical signals carried by water movement can travel centimeters or meters in hours, while those that depend on diffusion through soil pores may take days or weeks to cover the same distances. Electrical signals transmitted through fungal networks can travel much faster, potentially covering kilometers in minutes or hours. These differences in information transmission speed create temporal hierarchies that help coordinate forest floor processes across different spatial scales. Rapid electrical signals can coordinate immediate responses to environmental emergencies, while slower chemical signals provide the detailed information needed for long-term planning and resource allocation. The integration of fast and slow information systems creates communication networks that are both responsive to immediate needs and stable over long time periods. The energy costs of maintaining these information systems represent significant investments for forest floor organisms, but the benefits of coordination and cooperation far outweigh these costs. Plants may allocate 30% or more of their photosynthetic production to root, exudates, and other chemical signaling compounds. Fungi invest substantial resources in maintaining their network infrastructure and producing the chemical signals that coordinate their activities. Bacteria dedicate significant portions of their metabolism to producing and responding to chemical communication molecules. These energy investments create positive feedback loops that strengthen forest floor communities over time. The more resources organisms invest in communication and cooperation, the more efficient their collective resource use becomes, generating additional resources that can be reinvested in further communication and cooperation. This positive feedback helps explain the remarkable productivity and stability of mature forest ecosystems, where highly developed communication networks allow optimal resource allocation across the entire community. The evolution of these communication systems represents millions of years of refinement and optimization, creating networks of interaction that rival the complexity of any human-designed system. The molecular precision of chemical recognition systems, the efficiency of resource allocation networks, and the resilience of information storage and retrieval systems all reflect the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of organisms that have learned to work together for mutual benefit. The study of these systems has revealed principles of organization and cooperation that have applications far beyond forest ecology. The decentralized decision-making processes that coordinate forest floor activities, the efficient resource distribution networks that ensure all community members receive necessary resources, and the adaptive management systems that allow communities to respond to changing conditions all offer models for creating more sustainable and resilient human systems. As we continue our peaceful journey through this hidden world, we begin to appreciate that the forest floor represents one of nature's most sophisticated examples of sustainable community organization. Here, in the quiet depths beneath our feet, millions of species have learned to live together in harmony, creating systems that are both highly productive and remarkably stable. The lessons embedded in these ancient partnerships speak to fundamental principles of cooperation, efficiency, and resilience that could guide human efforts to create more harmonious relationships with the natural world. The geometric patterns that emerge from forest floor processes reveal mathematical principles that govern organization in living systems across all scales of existence. The branching patterns of root systems follow fractal geometries that maximize surface area while minimizing energy expenditure, creating structures that are both efficient and beautiful, and the spiral arrangements of moss leaves optimize light capture and water retention through mathematical relationships that appear throughout the natural world. The hexagonal spaces between soil particles create packing efficiencies that maximize both stability and porosity. These mathematical relationships are not imposed from outside, but emerge naturally from the physical and biological constraints that shape forest floor communities. The angles at which fungal hyphae branch reflect optimal solutions to the problem of exploring three-dimensional space efficiently. The spacing between root tips follows patterns that minimize competition while maximizing resource capture. The timing of chemical signal release follows mathematical rhythms that optimize information transfer while conserving energy. The discovery of these mathematical patterns in forest floor processes has revealed deep connections between biological organization and fundamental physical principles. The same mathematical relationships that describe the flow of rivers, the formation of crystals, and the structure of galaxies also govern the organization of soil communities. This suggests that forest floor ecosystems are not random assemblages of organisms, but highly ordered systems that reflect universal principles of efficient organization. The beauty that emerges from these mathematical relationships adds an aesthetic dimension to forest floor ecology that complements its functional significance. The elegant curves of root systems, the intricate patterns of fungal networks, and the delicate geometries of moss structures create visual compositions that rival any human artwork. This beauty is not superficial decoration, but reflects the deep harmony that emerges when form follows function in systems that have been optimized over evolutionary time. The temporal mathematics of forest floor processes create rhythms and cycles that connect local ecosystem processes to global environmental patterns. The daily fluctuations in soil respiration rates follow sinusoidal curves that integrate with atmospheric carbon dioxide cycles. The seasonal patterns of nutrient release match mathematical functions that predict plant growth requirements. The multi-year cycles of organic matter accumulation and decomposition create oscillations that help stabilize ecosystem function against environmental variability. These temporal patterns create opportunities for prediction and management that could help humans work more effectively with forest floor processes. Understanding the mathematical relationships that govern nutrient cycling could improve forest management practices by timing interventions to work with natural cycles rather than against them. Recognizing the geometric principles that govern root and fungal network development could inform restoration efforts by creating conditions that encourage natural network formation. The integration of spatial and temporal patterns in forest floor communities creates four-dimensional structures that exist in both space and time simultaneously. The growth of a fungal network through soil follows trajectories that optimize resource discovery over both spatial and temporal dimensions. The development of soil structure reflects the accumulated effects of countless biological and physical processes operating over multiple timescales. The evolution of forest floor communities represents changes in these four-dimensional structures that occur over geological time periods. This four-dimensional perspective on forest floor processes reveals connections between ecological and evolutionary timescales that help explain both the stability and adaptability of these communities. The short-term processes that maintain daily ecosystem function operate within longer-term cycles that ensure seasonal sustainability, which in turn operate within even longer cycles that provide evolutionary adaptability. This nested hierarchy of temporal scales creates resilience that allows forest floor communities to maintain essential functions while adapting to changing environmental conditions. The information processing capabilities of forest floor communities operate according to principles that parallel those found in computer networks and neural systems. The distributed nature of decision-making processes prevents single points of failure while allowing rapid response to local conditions. The redundancy built into communication networks ensures that essential information continues to flow even when individual pathways are disrupted. The memory storage systems preserve critical information while allowing adaptation to new conditions. These information processing capabilities emerge from the collective behavior of countless individual organisms, none of which possesses the computational power to coordinate forest-wide processes alone. The intelligence of forest floor communities is truly collective, arising from the interactions between simple components that follow local rules based on chemical and physical cues. This emergent intelligence allows forest floor communities to solve complex optimization problems that would challenge the most sophisticated human computer systems. The efficiency of resource allocation in forest floor communities demonstrates principles of economic organization that maximize both individual and collective benefits. The trading networks that connect plants and fungi operate according to market principles that ensure fair exchanges while encouraging continued cooperation. The competition between different fungal networks drives innovation and efficiency improvements that benefit entire forest communities. The insurance systems that allow organisms to share risks create stability that supports long-term planning and investment. These economic principles operate without central planning or external regulation, instead emerging from the self-interested behavior of individual organisms that have learned to cooperate for mutual benefit. The resulting systems are remarkably efficient at allocating resources, processing information, and coordinating activities across complex networks of interdependent organisms. The study of these natural economic systems has provided insights into sustainable economic organization that could inform human efforts to create more equitable and environmentally sustainable economic systems. The artistic patterns that emerge from forest floor processes create compositions that change continuously with the seasons and environmental conditions. The color gradients that develop in decomposing leaves create natural paintings that shift from vibrant autumn hues to subtle brown and gray tones as decomposition progresses. The textural contrasts between smooth moss surfaces and rough bark create tactile landscapes that invite exploration. The interplay of light and shadow in the forest floor's three-dimensional structure creates ever-changing displays of natural sculpture. These artistic qualities are not accidental byproducts, but reflect the deep aesthetic principles that emerge when function and form achieve perfect harmony. The beauty of forest floor communities arises from the same optimization processes that create their remarkable efficiency and resilience. This integration of aesthetic and functional qualities suggests that beauty and efficiency are not separate goals, but different aspects of the same underlying principles of optimal organization. The sensory experiences that forest floor communities create extend far beyond the visual realm to engage all human senses in a symphony of natural sensation. The subtle sounds of water moving through soil pores, the gentle rustling of small organisms moving through leaf litter, and the almost inaudible sighs of gases being released from decomposing organic matter create an acoustic landscape of remarkable delicacy. The rich fragrances of earth, growing things, and gentle decay create olfactory experiences that can trigger profound emotional responses and memories. The tactile qualities of forest floor materials invite hands-on exploration that can deepen understanding and appreciation of these communities. The spongy resilience of moss cushions, the crumbly texture of rich humus, and the smooth coolness of decomposing wood create sensory experiences that connect us directly to the physical processes that sustain forest life. These tactile connections can create emotional bonds that inspire deeper care and stewardship for forest ecosystems. The therapeutic qualities of forest floor environments have been recognized by cultures around the world, and are now being studied scientifically for their effects on human health and well-being. The negative ions generated by water movement through soil and organic matter may help improve mood and mental clarity. The phytochemicals released by soil organisms and decomposing plant materials may have beneficial effects on human immune systems. The complex sensory environments of forest floors may help reduce stress and promote relaxation through mechanisms that scientists are still working to understand. These therapeutic effects suggest that forest floor communities provide ecosystem services that extend beyond their ecological functions to include direct benefits for human health and well-being. The recognition of these services has led to increased interest in forest conservation and restoration as public health strategies. The integration of forest floor conservation with human health promotion creates new opportunities for building support for forest protection while improving human quality of life. The spiritual and philosophical dimensions of forest floor communities have inspired human thought and creativity throughout history. The cycles of death and rebirth that play out continuously in forest floor communities have provided metaphors for human spiritual development across many cultures. The cooperation and interdependence that characterize forest floor relationships have inspired philosophical reflections on community organization and social responsibility. The patient, persistent work of decomposition and renewal has offered lessons about the value of humble service and long-term thinking. These deeper meanings embedded in forest floor processes create opportunities for experiential learning that engages not just intellectual understanding, but emotional and spiritual development as well. Time spent observing and reflecting on forest floor communities can provide insights into fundamental questions about the nature of life, death, community, and sustainability that have relevance far beyond ecological science. As our gentle exploration draws us deeper into these contemplative depths, we find ourselves not just learning about forest floor communities, but being transformed by our encounter with their wisdom. In the quiet patience of decomposing leaves, we discover lessons about accepting change and finding purpose in serving others. In the intricate cooperation of root and fungal networks, we glimpse possibilities for human communities based on mutual support rather than competition. In the remarkable resilience of organisms that can shut down and restart their life processes, we find inspiration for developing our own capacity to adapt and endure. The forest floor becomes a teacher whose lessons extend far beyond the boundaries of ecological science into realms of ethics, aesthetics, and spiritual development. Its quiet wisdom speaks to fundamental questions about how to live well on Earth, how to create communities that support all their members, and how to find meaning and purpose in the patient work of building and maintaining the systems that sustain life. In learning to see and appreciate the hidden worlds beneath our feet, we begin to understand our own place in the larger community of life that surrounds and sustains us all. The hidden worlds own of life that beneath our feet, we begin sorrow place in the larger community to understand our uns and ains us all sust. The microscopic gardens that flourish within each droplet of forest moisture contain civilizations more complex than any human metropolis. Here, in spheres of water barely visible to the naked eye, entire ecosystems rise and fall with the rhythms of evaporation and condensation. When morning mist settles on a single moss leaf, it creates temporary lakes where rotifers spin like living pinwheels, their corona of beating hairs creating miniature whirlpools that draw in bacterial prey. These aquatic ballets last only until the sun climbs higher and begins to claim the water back to the sky. The architecture of these water worlds follows principles of fluid dynamics that create perfect environments for their microscopic inhabitants. Surface tension transforms each droplet into a sphere that acts as both habitat and spaceship, moving slowly across moss surfaces as gravity and air currents dictate its path. Within this mobile environment, different zones develop based on oxygen levels, light penetration, and the concentration of dissolved nutrients, creating vertical gradients that support different communities at different depths within the same droplet. Tardigrades navigate these aquatic spheres like gentle astronauts, their stubby legs propelling them through liquid space with movements that seem almost comically deliberate. These water bears, barely larger than the period at the end of this sentence, possess capabilities that would astound any science fiction writer. They can survive complete dehydration by replacing the water in their cells with special sugars that preserve their structure until moisture returns. They endure temperature extremes that would instantly destroy most life, and they've even survived exposure to the vacuum of space itself. When drought conditions arrive and the water spheres begin to shrink, these microscopic communities don't simply perish. Instead, they demonstrate survival strategies that represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Some organisms produce resistant spores that can wait decades for favorable conditions to return. Others enter states of suspended animation so complete that all metabolic processes essentially stop, yet they retain the ability to resume normal activity within minutes of rehydration. The chemistry of these shrinking water worlds concentrates nutrients and waste products in ways that create both opportunities and challenges for their inhabitants. As water evaporates, the remaining liquid becomes increasingly rich in dissolved minerals and organic compounds, creating nutrient bonanzas for organisms capable of tolerating the higher concentrations. Some bacteria specialize in these concentrated solutions, thriving in conditions that would be toxic to organisms adapted to more dilute environments. The transition between wet and dry conditions in moss communities creates temporal niches that different organisms have evolved to exploit. Some species are active only during the wettest periods, completing their entire life cycles in the brief windows when water is abundant. Others specialize in the intermediate conditions that exist as moss gradually dries, while still others are most active during the driest periods, when competition from water-dependent species is minimal. These temporal patterns create seasonal successions in miniature, with different communities dominating moss ecosystems at different times throughout the drying and re-wetting cycle. The arrival of rain after a dry period triggers rapid population explosions as dormant organisms awaken and begin reproducing frantically in the suddenly favorable conditions. These boom periods can be followed by equally dramatic population crashes as competition intensifies and resources become scarce. The sound of rain hitting the forest floor creates acoustic signatures that some organisms may use to predict favorable conditions, hours or days before moisture actually reaches their microhabitats. The vibrations that travel through soil and organic matter as water droplets impact the surface could serve as early warning systems that allow organisms to begin preparing for the changes that rain will bring. Some bacteria and fungi appear to increase their metabolic activity in response to these acoustic cues, positioning themselves to take maximum advantage of the resources that will soon become available. The electromagnetic fields generated by water movement through soil and organic matter add another layer of environmental information that forest floor organisms might use for navigation and communication. Lightning generates electromagnetic pulses that travel through the ground, potentially providing information about approaching storms to organisms sensitive to these signals. The movement of charged particles in flowing groundwater creates subtle electromagnetic patterns that could serve as landmarks for organisms navigating through soil environments. The quantum mechanical properties of water molecules create environments where the boundaries between chemistry and physics become increasingly blurred. The hydrogen bonds that give water its unique properties operate according to quantum principles that influence everything from nutrient absorption to the stability of biological membranes. These quantum effects may play roles in biological processes that scientists are only beginning to understand, potentially influencing everything from enzyme activity to the behavior of cellular water. The information processing that occurs within forest floor water systems operates on principles that parallel those found in biological neural networks. Water movement carries chemical signals that create feedback loops between different parts of the forest floor community, allowing coordinated responses to environmental changes. The persistence and degradation of different chemical signals creates memory effects that allow the community to integrate information over time, building up complex pictures of environmental conditions and resource availability. The mathematical relationships that govern water flow through forest floor materials create fractal patterns that optimize both water retention and drainage. The branching networks of soil pores follow geometric principles that maximize the surface area available for water-organism interactions while ensuring that excess water can drain away before it creates anaerobic conditions. These drainage networks operate according to the same mathematical principles that govern river systems, creating hierarchical patterns that efficiently collect and channel water flow. The seasonal changes in forest floor hydrology create annual cycles that help coordinate biological activities across the entire ecosystem. The spring melt that saturates forest soils provides optimal conditions for rapid microbial growth and organic matter processing. Summer heat that draws water from surface layers concentrates biological activity in deeper soil zones where moisture persists. Autumn rains that recharge soil water supplies trigger final bursts of activity before winter dormancy begins. The chemical gradients that develop around water sources in forest floor communities create zones of influence that can extend far beyond the immediate vicinity of moisture. Organisms cluster around these water sources in patterns that reflect their different tolerances for dehydration and their competitive abilities under different moisture conditions. The resulting spatial patterns create mosaics of biological activity that shift and change as water availability fluctuates throughout the season. The symbiotic relationships that develop between water-dependent organisms and those that can tolerate drier conditions create partnerships that increase the resilience of forest floor communities. Organisms that can store water in their tissues or create humid microclimates around themselves become focal points for community development, supporting other organisms that provide services like nutrient processing or pathogen control. These partnerships create positive feedback loops that enhance the water-holding capacity of the entire community. The evolution of water conservation strategies in forest floor organisms has produced innovations that rival any human water management technology. Some moss species can absorb water equal to 20 times their dry weight, creating living reservoirs that slowly release moisture over extended periods. Certain bacteria produce extracellular polymers that act like biological sponges, absorbing and retaining water in the spaces around their cells. Fungal networks create water distribution systems that can transport moisture from wet areas to dry zones across distances measured in meters. The energy costs of maintaining these water management systems represent significant investments that highlight the crucial importance of water for forest floor communities. Organisms may allocate substantial portions of their metabolic energy to producing water-absorbing compounds, maintaining cellular structures that resist dehydration, or creating protective environments that conserve moisture. These investments pay dividends by allowing organisms to remain active during dry periods when less well-adapted species must enter dormancy. The cascading effects of water availability ripple through forest floor food webs in ways that connect the smallest microorganisms to the largest trees. When drought conditions reduce microbial activity, the resulting slowdown in decomposition affects nutrient availability for plant roots. When abundant rainfall stimulates microbial population explosions, the increased nutrient cycling can trigger growth responses in plants throughout the forest. These connections create feedback loops that link water cycles to carbon cycles, nutrient cycles, and energy flows throughout the ecosystem. The cultural significance that water holds for forest floor communities extends beyond its purely biological functions to encompass roles in communication, territory marking, and social organization. Some soil bacteria use water films as highways for movement and encounter, creating social networks that facilitate genetic exchange and cooperative behaviors. Fungal networks use water as a medium for transporting chemical signals that coordinate activities across vast distances. Even the timing of reproductive activities in many soil organisms is coordinated by water availability, creating community-wide synchronization that enhances reproductive success. The therapeutic properties of forest floor water systems create environments that promote healing and regeneration throughout the community. The negative ions generated by moving water may stimulate biological processes in ways that accelerate growth and repair. The dissolved organic compounds that accumulate in forest floor water may have antimicrobial properties that help prevent disease outbreaks. The stable humidity created by effective water management systems provides optimal conditions for the cellular repair processes that maintain organism health. The artistic qualities of forest floor water systems create visual displays that change constantly with environmental conditions. Morning dew transforms spider webs into strings of diamonds, each droplet acting as a tiny lens that focuses light into brilliant points. Frost patterns that develop on moss surfaces create crystalline sculptures that last only until the sun's warmth claims them back to vapor. The play of light through water droplets suspended in forest air creates prismatic displays that paint rainbow fragments across the green canvas of the forest floor. The musical qualities of forest floor water systems contribute to the acoustic landscape of the forest in ways that extend far beyond the obvious sounds of dripping and flowing. The resonance of water within soil pores creates subtle harmonic frequencies that may influence the behavior of organisms sensitive to vibrational cues. The rhythmic patterns of water absorption and release in moss communities create temporal beats that could serve as biological metronomes for organisms that coordinate their activities with environmental cycles. The philosophical implications of forest floor water systems invite contemplation of fundamental questions about the nature of life and its relationship to the physical environment. The way that water serves simultaneously as habitat, medium, and message carrier in forest floor communities demonstrates the interconnectedness of all natural processes. The cycles of concentration and dilution, abundance and scarcity, movement and stillness that characterize forest floor hydrology mirror larger patterns that govern everything from cellular metabolism to global climate systems. The future of forest floor water systems faces challenges from climate change that could fundamentally alter their structure and function. Changes in precipitation patterns, increased frequency of extreme weather events, and rising temperatures could disrupt the delicate moisture balances that have sustained these communities for millions of years. Understanding how these systems respond to environmental change has become crucial for predicting and managing the future health of forest ecosystems. The conservation of forest floor water systems requires approaches that recognize their integration with larger watershed processes and global water cycles. Protecting the water holding capacity of forest soils supports not only local forest health, but also regional water security and climate stability. The recognition of these broader connections has led to increased appreciation for the ecosystem services that forest floor communities provide to human societies and natural systems alike. As we continue our gentle journey through this aqueous realm, we begin to understand that water in the forest floor is far more than simply a biological necessity. It is the medium through which life expresses its most fundamental creativity, the canvas upon which countless organisms paint their survival strategies, and the conductor that orchestrates the symphony of cooperation and competition that sustains these ancient communities. In learning to see the artistry and intelligence that water makes possible in the forest floor, we gain new appreciation for the elegance and sophistication of natural systems that have learned to thrive within the constraints and opportunities that our planet provides. The magnetic properties of forest floor materials create invisible landscapes that influence the behavior of organisms in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. Iron-rich particles in soil create weak magnetic fields that some bacteria use for navigation, aligning themselves with these fields as they move through the three-dimensional maze of soil pores. The magnetic signatures of different soil types may provide location information that helps organisms navigate back to favorable microhabitats after foraging expeditions that take them away from familiar territories. The electrical conductivity of forest floor materials varies dramatically with moisture content, creating dynamic electrical environments that change with weather patterns and seasonal cycles. During dry periods, the electrical resistance of soil increases dramatically, potentially affecting the behavior of organisms that rely on electrical cues for navigation or communication. When rain saturates the forest floor, the resulting increase in conductivity may trigger changes in microbial behavior that help coordinate community-wide responses to the newly favorable conditions. The thermal properties of forest floor materials create temperature landscapes that provide crucial habitat diversity for organisms with different thermal requirements. The high thermal mass of water-saturated organic matter creates temperature stability that allows cold-sensitive organisms to survive winter conditions that would otherwise be lethal. The lower thermal conductivity of dry organic matter creates insulation that protects organisms from rapid temperature fluctuations that could disrupt their physiological processes. The optical properties of forest floor materials create light environments that range from the bright filtered sunlight that reaches moss surfaces to the complete darkness that exists in deeper soil layers. This gradient of light availability supports organisms with vastly different photosynthetic capabilities, from the sophisticated light harvesting systems of moss to the chemosynthetic bacteria that derive energy from chemical reactions in the absence of any light whatsoever. The mechanical properties of forest floor materials create physical environments that challenge organisms in unique ways. The compressible nature of organic matter means that organisms must be able to tolerate changes in the physical dimensions of their habitat. As moisture levels fluctuate and overlying materials settle, the fibrous structure of partially decomposed organic matter creates obstacles that organisms must navigate around or through, selecting for body plans and movement strategies that can cope with these physical constraints. The chemical buffering capacity of forest floor materials creates stable chemical environments that allow sensitive biochemical processes to proceed without disruption from pH fluctuations that might otherwise prove lethal. The organic acids produced by decomposing plant material are neutralized by basic compounds released from weathering minerals, creating chemical stability that supports the complex enzyme systems that drive most biological processes. The nutrient storage capacity of forest floor materials creates biological banks that can supply essential elements during periods when external inputs are limited. The slow release of nutrients from decomposing organic matter provides steady supplies of nitrogen, phosphorus, and other essential elements that support continued biological activity even during seasons when plant growth has ceased and fresh organic matter inputs are minimal. The gas exchange properties of forest floor materials create atmospheric environments that differ significantly from the overlying air. The spaces between soil particles contain air with elevated carbon dioxide concentrations and reduced oxygen levels, creating conditions that select for organisms with specialized respiratory systems. Some soil organisms have evolved to thrive in these low oxygen environments, using alternative metabolic pathways that allow them to extract energy from chemical reactions that would be impossible in normal atmospheric conditions. The structural complexity of forest floor materials creates architectural environments that provide countless opportunities for niche specialization. The fractal geometry of decomposing organic matter creates habitat spaces at every scale, from microscopic pores that house individual bacteria to larger cavities that can shelter arthropods and other invertebrates. This hierarchical structure ensures that organisms of every size can find appropriate habitat spaces within the forest floor community. The dynamic nature of forest floor structure means that habitat spaces are constantly being created, modified, and destroyed as organic matter decomposes and new material is added. This constant restructuring creates opportunities for colonization and succession that keep forest floor communities in a state of continuous renewal. Organisms must be able to adapt to changing habitat conditions or be capable of dispersing to new habitat spaces as their current homes become unsuitable. The connectivity of forest floor structure creates transportation networks that allow organisms and materials to move throughout the community. The tunnels created by root growth and animal activity serve as highways for organism movement, while the pore networks that develop in soil provide pathways for water and dissolved nutrient transport. These transportation systems are essential for maintaining the high levels of interaction and exchange that characterize healthy forest floor communities. The stability of forest floor structure depends on biological and physical processes that operate on vastly different timescales. The mechanical binding provided by root systems and fungal networks can change rapidly in response to environmental conditions, while the chemical binding that develops as organic matter decomposes may persist for decades or centuries. This combination of short-term flexibility and long-term stability allows forest floor communities to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining essential structural integrity. The relationship between structure and function in forest floor materials demonstrates principles of engineering that have inspired biomimetic applications in human technology. The hierarchical pore structure that optimizes both water retention and drainage has informed the design of materials for construction and environmental remediation. The self-assembling properties of soil organic matter have inspired developments in materials science that could lead to more sustainable manufacturing processes. The sensory landscape that emerges from forest floor structure creates information environments that guide organism behavior in sophisticated ways. The tactile cues provided by different surface textures help organisms navigate through complex, three-dimensional environments. The acoustic properties of different structural elements create soundscapes that may carry information about environmental conditions and the presence of other organisms. The chemical gradients that develop around different structural features provide olfactory maps that guide organisms toward resources and away from hazards. The evolutionary history embedded in forest floor structure tells stories of adaptation and innovation that span millions of years. The specialized root structures that allow plants to extract nutrients from nutrient-poor soils reflect evolutionary responses to competition for limited resources. The elaborate tunnel systems created by soil invertebrates represent solutions to the challenges of movement and foraging in dense three-dimensional environments. The biochemical innovations that allow organisms to break down the most recalcitrant components of plant material represent millions of years of evolutionary arms races between decomposers and plant defenses. The ecological services provided by forest floor structure extend far beyond the immediate forest community to influence regional and global environmental processes. The carbon storage capacity of forest floor organic matter plays crucial roles in climate regulation by removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in stable forms. The water filtration services provided by forest floor materials protect water quality in streams and groundwater systems. The habitat provision services support biodiversity that contributes to ecosystem resilience and stability. The conservation challenges facing forest floor structure require management approaches that recognize both its ecological importance and its vulnerability to human activities. Soil compaction from heavy machinery can destroy the pore structure that takes decades to develop naturally. Chemical contamination can disrupt the biological processes that maintain soil structure and fertility. Climate change can alter the temperature and moisture conditions that govern structural development and stability. The restoration of damaged forest floor structure requires understanding of the biological and physical processes that create and maintain these complex systems. Successful restoration efforts must re-establish not only the appropriate chemical and biological conditions, but also the physical structure that provides habitat space and facilitates essential ecosystem processes. This often requires patience measured in decades, as natural processes slowly rebuild the structural complexity that characterizes healthy forest floor communities. The monitoring of forest floor structure requires techniques that can assess both its physical and biological characteristics at multiple spatial and temporal scales. Traditional soil sampling methods may miss important structural features that operate at microscopic scales, while remote sensing techniques may not detect changes in biological activity that precede structural changes. Integrated monitoring approaches that combine multiple techniques are essential for understanding how forest floor structure responds to environmental changes and management interventions. The research frontiers in forest floor structure science involve developing better understanding of the relationships between structure, function, and environmental conditions. Advanced imaging techniques are revealing structural details that were previously invisible, while molecular methods are identifying the biological processes that create and maintain structural features. Mathematical modeling approaches are beginning to predict how structural changes might affect ecosystem processes and services. As our exploration carries us deeper into the architectural marvels of the forest floor, we discover that structure and function are not separate aspects of these communities, but different perspectives on the same underlying reality. The spaces between particles are as important as the particles themselves, the emptiness as significant as the substance. In learning to see the forest floor as a living architecture that grows and changes according to principles that integrate physics, chemistry, and biology, we gain appreciation for the sophisticated engineering that emerges when life has millions of years to perfect its designs. The forest floor reveals itself as nature's masterpiece of sustainable engineering, where every component serves multiple functions and waste becomes the raw material for new construction. Here, in this realm of perpetual twilight and endless transformation, we find lessons about building communities that work in harmony with natural processes, creating structures that support life while adapting gracefully to changing conditions. The wisdom embedded in these ancient systems speaks to possibilities for human design that could create a more sustainable and beautiful world. The crystalline mathematics of frost formation on forest floor surfaces creates temporary sculptures that exist for only the briefest moments before surrendering to the sun's gentle warmth. Each ice crystal that forms on a moss leaf follows geometric principles that have governed the behavior of water molecules since the first oceans condensed from primordial vapor. The hexagonal symmetries that emerge in these frozen moments reflect the same mathematical relationships that appear in snowflakes, soap bubbles, and the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower head. These ephemeral ice gardens transform the forest floor into galleries of natural art that exist in the space between night and morning. As temperatures drop below freezing, water vapor in the still air begins to crystallize directly onto surfaces, building elaborate structures one molecule at a time. The process requires perfect stillness and precise temperature gradients, conditions that occur only during those magical hours when the forest holds its breath between the cooling of night and the warming of dawn. The formation of these frost crystals creates acoustic signatures that are almost too subtle for human perception, yet may serve as important environmental cues for forest floor organisms. The tiny sounds of crystal growth, the gentle pops and creaks of expanding ice, and the whispered sighs of sublimation create a winter soundscape that operates in frequencies at the very edge of hearing. Some organisms may use these acoustic signals to detect favorable conditions for activity, or to time important biological processes with environmental cycles. The optical effects created by frost on forest floor materials transform familiar landscapes into alien worlds, where ordinary objects become extraordinary through the alchemy of ice. Moss leaves become jeweled crowns, spider webs transform into nets of diamonds, and the humblest twig becomes a branch of crystal. Light behaves differently in these frozen environments, bending and reflecting through ice structures to create displays of color and brilliance that seem to glow with internal fire. The thermal dynamics of frost formation and sublimation create microclimates that can significantly influence the survival strategies of forest floor organisms. The energy released when water vapor condenses into ice provides small amounts of heat that can moderate temperature extremes in the immediate vicinity of crystallization. Conversely, the energy absorbed during sublimation can create cooling effects that extend the duration of favorable temperature conditions for cold-adapted organisms. The chemical processes that occur at the interface between ice crystals and organic matter create opportunities for molecular interactions that would be impossible under other conditions. The structured water molecules in ice crystals can facilitate chemical reactions by bringing reactant molecules into precise alignment, acting as molecular templates that guide the formation of complex organic compounds. These ice-mediated reactions may play important roles in the seasonal cycles of nutrient processing that characterize forest floor communities. The mechanical effects of frost formation create physical forces that can significantly alter the structure of forest floor materials. The expansion of water as it freezes can crack rock particles, break apart soil aggregates, and create new pore spaces that improve soil drainage and aeration. This frost action represents a form of physical weathering that operates on microscopic scales, gradually transforming the physical architecture of forest floor communities over seasonal and annual cycles. The biological responses to frost conditions reveal adaptation strategies that allow forest floor organisms to survive and even thrive during the coldest periods of the year. Some bacteria enter specialized dormancy states that allow them to survive being frozen solid, while others continue active metabolism at temperatures well below the freezing point of water. Certain fungi produce antifreeze compounds that prevent ice crystal formation within their cells, allowing them to remain active even when their external environment is locked in ice. The interaction between frost and the chemical signals that coordinate forest floor activities creates winter communication systems that operate according to different rules than those that govern warmer seasons. Chemical messages that would normally disperse rapidly through liquid water may become concentrated at ice-liquid interfaces, creating zones of high signal intensity that persist for extended periods. The reduced volatility of chemical compounds at low temperatures means that chemical signals may travel shorter distances, but remain detectable for much longer periods. The seasonal rhythms of frost formation and melting create annual cycles that help coordinate community-wide responses to changing environmental conditions. The first frosts of autumn signal the beginning of winter preparation activities, triggering changes in metabolism, reproduction, and resource allocation throughout the forest floor community. The final frosts of spring mark the transition to active growing season conditions, releasing organisms from winter dormancy and initiating the rapid growth phases that characterize the early growing season. The ecological significance of frost processes extends far beyond their immediate effects on individual organisms to influence ecosystem-scale processes that connect forest floor communities to regional and global environmental systems. The timing and intensity of frost events can determine the success or failure of reproductive cycles, the efficiency of nutrient cycling processes, and the competitive relationships between different species. These local effects can cascade through food webs and biogeochemical cycles to influence forest productivity, carbon storage, and biodiversity at landscape scales. The beauty of frost phenomena in forest floor environments creates sensory experiences that engage human observers in profound ways. The delicate architecture of ice crystals appeals to our aesthetic sense, while the ephemeral nature of these formations reminds us of the constant change that characterizes all natural systems. The silence that accompanies frost formation creates opportunities for contemplation and reflection that can deepen our connection to the natural world. The scientific study of frost processes in forest floor environments has revealed principles of crystal growth, heat transfer, and mass transport that have applications far beyond forest ecology. The mechanisms that govern ice crystal formation have informed the development of materials science applications, while the biological adaptations to freezing conditions have inspired innovations in preservation technology and cold weather engineering. The conservation implications of frost processes highlight the vulnerability of forest floor communities to climate change impacts that could alter the frequency, intensity, and timing of freezing conditions. Changes in winter temperature patterns could disrupt the frost cycles that many organisms depend on for successful completion of their life cycles. Earlier spring warming could cause organisms to emerge from winter dormancy before conditions are suitable for active growth, while later autumn cooling could prevent adequate winter preparation. The monitoring of frost processes requires sophisticated instrumentation that can detect and measure the subtle changes in temperature, humidity, and surface conditions that govern ice crystal formation. Traditional meteorological measurements may miss the microclimatic variations that determine frost formation at the scale relevant to forest floor organisms. Advanced sensor networks and remote sensing technologies are beginning to provide the detailed environmental data needed to understand how frost processes respond to changing climate conditions. The restoration of forest floor communities must take into account the frost processes that shape these environments and the organisms that depend on them. Management activities that alter surface conditions, vegetation cover, or microclimate patterns can significantly affect frost formation and the biological processes that depend on it. Successful restoration requires understanding of how human activities interact with natural frost processes to create conditions that support healthy forest floor communities. As our gentle journey through these hidden worlds draws to a close, we carry with us the quiet wisdom of the forest floor. In the patient work of decomposition, the intricate webs of cooperation, and the endless cycles of renewal, we've glimpsed the profound intelligence that sustains all life on Earth. May this peaceful exploration remind you that beneath every step lies a universe of wonder, waiting quietly to inspire and restore us all.